as tiny children and still in the womb, and then just fresh into the field of the relative. So powerful and so aware of the entire range of creation in all its finest detail. And there are certain perceptions or levels of perception which are very delicate. And even in the earliest days of life, these very early traumatic experiences can create blockages. They're the early experiences create the initial blockages that tend to set the form or set the course for the way intelligence develops throughout that lifetime, the way the physiology develops to accommodate that intelligence or consciousness. And so we end up living a life based on that foundation of all those really, really early experiences. Sometimes we can go back and modify, particularly during the period of neural exuberance, which is from about, I think, 1.5 to around 5, or I think the peak of neural exuberance is like around 2 or 3 or 4, right in there. And then it filters out until around age 7, and then it's pretty much done. But during the peak of neural exuberance, it is possible to rebuild connections which can undo some of those early blockages. It is possible at this time for the divine in each of us to interface with our own self during that time of neural exuberance and actually support and enhance the ability to restructure a more stable foundation for a higher experience of totality now, or oneness, or infinity, or wholeness, however you want, an infinite myriad of words we can use to describe the big self. This is consciousness folding back on itself. This is the sound coming from the center of our webinar. Our webinar has an orderly form placed over it, and I actually I have technology to help us with today. I'm going to show you. This is a sacred geometrical form called a flower of life. It's very simple, but it was described by a great physicist who had recently figured out the mathematics of measuring protons. And he's showing how, at the deepest level of creation, this form is the compactified value of space. Looks like this form. And this is what it looks like in a very simple 2-dimensional shape. And this is what it looks like in a more multi-dimensional shape. I just thought everybody would like to take a look at this. We might go back and look some more, but the reason I'm showing this form to you, you will find based on yesterday's webinar, we're using this form. I'm finding that this form is extremely useful to support the magnification and enhancement of any energy work whatsoever. Any energy work whatsoever is enhanced by overlaying this form. Now, this form, as physics tells us, is present in every particle of creation. However, you'll notice that this form has its own structure within layers, within layers, within layers. So it turns out that the layers go to infinity. And every time we offer our own consciousness up to this, we can create more and more layers. And as we do so, it enriches and enhances and thickens and lushifies. I don't think that's even a word, but it should be. It lushifies the present moment. And that's what today's webinar is all about, is how do we integrate, how do we build that bridge between totality and everyday experience? All right, now there's a way to stop share right there. Okay, it's me again. Our webinar, Flower of Life Matrix, placed over a pillar of tone coming out through the center is offered like a gift at the feet of one's own silent divinity in early childhood, in the period of neural exuberance, when you were forming your paradigms, when you were forming the belief systems upon which the whole rest of the life has evolved. We fold back into our own divine nature at that time and bring the wisdom and the perception and the perspective of the present moment into that little child self. And as we do that, we're able to support our little child self to structure in such a way as to not lose a lot of the very, very tenderest capabilities of perception, the very most delicate and also very subtle and also very powerful levels, which is because we're building these bridges. This is the nature of energy work, building the bridges from total. And didn't that picture look like bridges? It kind of did. It's those delicate areas. Sometimes I think in terms of, remember the diagram of the self from very subtle to very dense, and that these denser levels up here tend to be where the stresses get held or locked into tissue a little bit more, because this is the more manifest level of the self, and then these subtler levels are where we find a lot of the capabilities and the flexibility of consciousness, where it can move and it can flow up into the denser levels and start to eliminate some of the boundaries and limitations. But as we do that with ourselves, looking at the totality of the whole life, and because of that flower of life matrix being part of this picture, it extends and expands that work. It magnifies that work to extend to a larger comprehension of what is the entire life. Ultimately, we're building the bridge between totality and presence. So that life is very big. If we're thinking of it in terms of time, isolated space-time, is very big, and it expands all the way out to this level of eternal wisdom of the self. And this was something that we kind of came across last night, was the eternal wisdom of the self. It's ever so slightly manifest. It's at a very delicately manifested level of self. It is the manifestation of the concept of the bridge. Eternal self, eternal wisdom of the self, is the manifestation of the concept of the bridge. So basically what it's doing is it's connecting any aspect of individuality. As long as we're all sitting here in our virtual room together with our physical bodies, it means that we are dealing with the manifest. And so that aspect of the self, it deserves and requires to be more stabilized so that at every point the bridge exists. Just like that cool picture. I mean, just looking at that picture, I'm sharing screen again. Looking at this picture, in a sense, it creates that. You know, whatever we put our attention on, attention is the number one go-to tool of energy healing, because wherever the attention flows, it flows in this form. This is what your attention looks like at a finer level of creation anyway. And if we think about, I'm going to use my cursor here. If we think about ourselves right here in the center, and all the various like past lives or past virtual levels of creation, we can look through, we could say this is us and this is our current life here. Maybe this circle is our current life. Then over a bridge of consciousness, we can go back and we can find that point of neural exuberance in early childhood, maybe here, or I would guess down here somewhere. And at that level, the bridges, as you can see, are naturally already existing. So we make the connection through awareness brings a connection. There is a huge, huge value in connecting to tiny self, to young self that was in a state of deepest spontaneous connection to wholeness, and to the eternal wisdom of being. I'm just holding it because I'm feeling a lot is going on right now. A lot of healing energy is moving through our entire group. It's like a very big, very powerful flow of energy transformation is occurring. And I'm definitely feeling that the thrust of that transformation is engaging at the solar plexus level of the physiology. So I guess that's why we had to do that clearing. And the work that is happening with regards to you sitting there and me speaking, coming through this throat chakra, this fifth chakra, connects it up here, actually connects to the heart, the means by which the mind and the heart integrate and analyze and synthesize the information. So I'm offering that this form, this flower, actually, no, being wants to move a different direction. Okay, so it wants to do, we're going to do an exercise now. Time for an exercise. Can close the eyes. And we're just going to take our awareness, our attention, which is pure attention, pure being, pure awareness. It is the very form of totality itself. It is kind of like the aspect of totality that the conscious mind has some ability to direct. And just do a little scan of the body. And notice that awareness tends to settle down when the eyes close, and then it tends to spontaneously go to whatever area is requiring most love and attention, whatever area has a need for support. And I'm seeing an activation of heart chakras. So as the attention flows, so does the love. And because of very, very young, innocent, neural exuberant self integrated with this experience, we're able to draw on the tender innocence and the empathetic compassion of very, very fine, delicate levels of creation. So sweet. There's certain, this area of creation was accessible in tininess, in our tininess, and it's one of the first to go when stressful experiences come up, but it's rebirthing, it's re-blossoming in awareness. The quality of being at that level of creation is so soft, so, so sweet. And that sweetness and softness moves into every area of the body. And I'm seeing for some people joints particularly. I'm seeing joints and, of course, digestive system. Last night we had circulatory and nervous system going on big time. Beautiful. And what it does is, this is you communicating with you through the feeling of that purest, innocent tenderness. It's a speech of feeling. And as it speaks to the areas of the physiology that require loving support, it speaks directly their mother tongue and gives rise to the drawing forth, because that flower of life matrix is overlaying everything. It draws in from the furthest reaches of creation whatever specific information and wisdom and knowledge and softness is required to promote maximum healing with maximum efficiency. Beautiful. And that is reflecting back to the heart. And so the heart is getting kind of like a kickback, like a interest. The heart is gaining interest on that experience. You can open the eyes. Nice job, everybody. That was beautiful. Okay, so I can go back to, sorry, I'm still getting used to it. Share. Okay, there we go. Hello. That experience, now that we're sitting with our eyes open, I'm just looking out into the group of how integrated the experience is, because it's one thing to say, well, totality is everything that there is, and energy work is a process whereby we're building bridges, always building bridges. But the question is, how long can those bridges last? How can we build bridges which will never fail, ever? That once they're built, they're built. And one of the things that I'm seeing happening here is that based on this last process that we just went through, this is a very solid bridge. Sometimes I have, dear ones come and we sit and we do some healing work and it works and it's good, but then, there are old habits in the tissues of the physiology that can sometimes creep back in and, oh no, but I'm not really lovable or whatever. Something creeps back in. So it's reestablishing to balance. It's reestablishing to balance. Belief systems are basically behind the limitations in pretty much every case. Any limitations, illnesses, weaknesses, shortcomings, problems that crop up. And behind belief systems in almost every case is fear. So fear is clearing. Fear is clearing. And fear is clearing not so much at an isolated level of the self here, but I'm seeing it clearing out in a really kind of large systemic structure of self. You're the whole universe. We're clearing fear from the collective consciousness right now. This group. Yes, based on the softness, that foundation of softness that was just created. I don't know about you, but actually I'm checking in with all of you. But that softness that we created in that exercise that we just did is still sitting like a pillow. It's like pillows on everyone here, that sweetness and that softness. In fact, because of the Flower of Life matrix, everything that we created in that healing radiated out through the matrix of creation. So it filled in lots and lots of gaps and lots of places where that further softness is required to support healthy decision making and create foundations whereby people's spontaneous inner healing mechanisms can start to awaken in a natural, healthy way. Greater sensitivity to what's really going on inside. In that softness, it's easier to look at truth, because then looking at truth doesn't become a kind of harsh, painful process. It's pillowed, it's softened with pillows. Nice job, everybody. So that's going out to the whole collective consciousness.